women face. We have to remember those that we lost in Orlando, as well as those who are injured and all of their loved ones, and know that we will all continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. But the one thing I just want us all to know, that in tragic times like these in this country, it's time for us to come together, to love each other, to support each other, and not tear each other down. So I hope that that is one of the many takeaways that we move forward with. And I just love you all for the work, the amazing work you all have done today and that you do every single day. So I'm going to turn it over to Oprah.
Hello.
We have Oprah Winfrey here.
And our First Lady of the United States.
Of America.
Of America, not just of women, yes. So I think that the fact that I've been watching this being streamed all day, and the fact that there are men here, women here of all ages, young women, maturing women, and all walks of life is a move in the right direction. Would you not say?
Absolutely. I'm just proud of all the work that's been done here. So I agree.
Well, I wanted to start with the issue of self-value and self-worth, because over the years I've interviewed thousands of people, most of them women, and I would say that the root of every dysfunction I've ever encountered, every problem, has been some sense of a lacking of self-value or of self-worth. And I know that we all know that we live in a world where you are constantly being bombarded by images that encourage you to be liked, literally, and it's a lot to live up to. And I wonder, particularly you, who've had to face this as your own woman and as a candidate's wife, the pressure of other people's expectations. And what can you share with our audience here and online that would help us stand more inside ourselves and own that space?
Yeah, very good question. Well, you know, one of the things that I tell my mentees, I tell my daughters, is that our first job in life as women, I think, is to get to know ourselves. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. We spend our time pleasing, satisfying, looking out into the world to define who we are, listening to the messages, the images, the limited definitions that people have of who we are. Mm-hmm. And that's true for women of color, for sure. There is a limited box that we are put in.
Yeah.
And if we live by that limited definition, we miss out on a lot of who we are. But it takes taking the time to know who you are to be able to deal with the onslaught of negative messages that you're bound to get. So for me, I came into this with a pretty clear sense of myself. And some of that comes with age, some of that comes with experience, some of that comes from being fortunate enough to have been raised by a loving mother, strong, focused, and a father who loved me dearly. So I fortunately came into this situation with a really clear sense of who I was. So when you hear the smack talking from outside the world, it's easy to sort of brush that off because I know who I am. You know.
But when you came in, there were the world's expectations. There were other expectations. What did you really expect?
You know, it's interesting. I really tried not to limit myself by expectations.
Right, because nobody grows up thinking I'm going to be a first lady.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know, and as you all know, when Barack was talking about running, I was like, are you crazy? I mean, would you just like chill out and do something else with your life? So I was working hard to try to get him to do the other thing, so whatever that was. So yeah, absolutely, it wasn't something that I could have planned for, could have expected from myself. But one of the things I knew, because people asked all throughout the campaign, what are your issues going to be? What are you going to be like as First Lady? And I said, I have to wait until I get there to figure out what that's going to feel like for me. Right? I specifically did not read other First Ladies' books because I didn't want to be influenced by how they define the role. I knew that I would have to define this role very uniquely and specifically to me and who I was. So I came in thinking about who I wanted to be in this position and who I needed to be for my girls, first of all. So you remember, you know, Malia and Sasha were little itty bitties when we came into office. I mean, it still moves me to tears to think about the first day I put them in the car with their Secret Service agents to go to their first day of school. And I saw them leaving and I thought, what on earth am I doing to these babies? So I knew right then and there my first job was to make sure they were going to be whole and normal and cared for in the midst of all this craziness. And then I started to understand that if I was going to protect them, I had to, number one, protect myself and protect my time. So I knew going into this role that I didn't want to waste any time, that any time I spent away from my kids, and I actually took this on even before I became First Lady. Even as a lawyer, as a vice president at a hospital, one of the things I realized is that if you do not take control over your time and your life, other people will gobble it up. If you don't prioritize yourself, you constantly start falling lower and lower on your list. Your kids fall lower and lower on your list.
So by the time you got here, you knew how to do that.
I knew how to do that.
I think that's one of the number one issues with women. You know, I never, in all my years of interviewing, have ever heard a man say, you know, I just don't have the time. I just don't. I don't find a way to balance.
You know why? Because they don't have to balance anything.
Yes, yes.
Sorry. You know, and I hope that that is changing, but so many men don't have to do it all.
So how did you figure it out? You know, I've read the story, I'm sure many of you have heard the story of early on, you were going to a job interview and you took Sasha with you to interview.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We never heard, did you get that job?
I did.
Well, okay.
I did. I was the vice president of community outreach for the University of Chicago Hospital. And I got that job because I didn't compromise. Because before working at that job, I was working as an associate dean. I had Malia. Barack was in the U.S. Senate. So I was basically, you know, mothering part-time on my own. I had a full-time job, so I tried part-time. I've talked about this before. I tried part-time because I thought I have to figure this out. I have to be able to pick the kids up. I've got to be able to do all this. So tried part-time. So only thing I found out from part-time was that you just get paid part-time. Because I was still doing a full-time job. I was just cramming it all into the few hours that I was there and driving myself crazy. So I had vowed that if I continued to work, that I would never settle for part-time. I knew what my time and energy was worth. So when I went into the president's office to interview for that job, I thought, I have a little baby. I don't have babysitting. So here we go. We're all going to go in to see the president because this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I said, and if I take this job, I need flexibility and I need full pay. So if you want me to leave my baby and my kids, then you're going to have to pay me because I'm going to do the job. That was never a question. You know, I could deliver, but I knew then I wasn't going to sell myself short, and I had the leverage at the time to make that decision.
Well, that comes from a sense of, and you said you arrived here knowing who you were. I think that is the journey. That is the journey. And there is a question from Farm Fresh Gal.
Farm Fresh Gal.
She must have her own garden.
I hope.
Like we do. Yes. And Farm Fresh Gal says, as a woman leader in the corporate world, I feel like I have to be brave a lot. And what you just described was brave. Any advice or tips on bravery? You
know, that's a good question. Gosh, I don't know if I ever I don't ever view it as bravery.
Yeah, you didn't think that was brave, saying, "Look, I'm
Right.
going to be paid full time."
Right. I
think that's
just
brave.
viewed it as I'm not going to be taken advantage of. You know, I am just not going to keep selling
You
myself.
knew your value.
That's
You
absolutely
knew your value.
right.
I was just saying that to a friend recently.
And that
who was-
goes back to knowing who you are. And I think as women and young girls, we have to invest that time in getting to understand who we are and liking who we are. Because I like me. I've liked me for a very long time. So for a long time, I've had a very good relationship with myself.
I know.
And we all like ourselves in
Yeah.
here. But you gotta work to get to that place. And if you're going out into the world as a professional and you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, you don't know how much you're worth, then you have to be brave. And then you have to, you have to count on the kindness and goodness of others to bestow that goodness on you when you should be working to get it on your own because you deserve it.
Because you know your own value.
Know your own value, absolutely.
Okay, so when you're saying, I know who I am, and I'm telling you, it's the thread that runs through everything. It's the thing that allows you to stand in your own truth. And one of the things for years that Maya Angelou used to say to me is, baby, you need to know that you alone are enough. You alone are enough. So how do we get there? You were there, you've loved yourself a long time. What is that process?
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone. And I can't say that I've loved myself for a long time, but there was a journey to get there. And some of it starts as a young girl when you confront your first bully, the first time somebody calls you out your name, as we would say. The first disappointments and failures that you have, how do you deal with that? What support systems do you set up for yourself? I always tell young girls, surround yourself with goodness. I learned early on how to, get the haters out of my life, You got to just sort of surround yourself with people who uplift you, who hold you up. And for whatever reason, I was lucky I had people like that. I had parents who held me up.
Yeah.
I had a father
I think people who have good
valued
parents
me.
are,
Right.
they come into the world with a strength, yes, and an advantage.
And
yes.
that was an advantage. But if you don't have that parent, that mother, that father, then you got to find it. You got to find those people because they're out there. I tell my mentees there is somebody out there who loves you and who is waiting to love you, and you just have to find them, and that means you have to make room for them. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of low-life folks who aren't supporting you, then there is no room for the people who do love you.
You mentioned a moment ago the haters. How do you handle the haters, particularly in this office where haters have to be handled politically correctly and with discretion? And I know so many people are faced with it. We know this about social media. People say just the meanest things, and you're faced in your life with people who can tear you down a lot, the haters.
Well, when it comes to
Hateration.
social media, there are just times I turn off the world. There are just some times you have to give yourself space to be quiet, which means you got to set those phones down. You can't be reading all that stuff. I mean, that's like letting somebody just walk up and slap you, You would never do that. You would never just sit there and go, slap me in the face, and I'm good with it. No, so why would you open yourself up to that? So that's one thing with social media, and I don't read that stuff. I learned that early in the campaign. I couldn't keep reading stuff about my husband and what people thought, because I knew who he was, I knew what was going on in our home, in our lives, so I didn't need to read about it from somebody else. But the other thing that I have found, particularly in this job, that people won't remember what other people say about you, but they will remember what you do. So my strategy, and I've always been like this, when a teacher would come and tell me that I couldn't do something, I would get so much satisfaction proving them wrong. I'd be like, okay, all right. Oh, you don't think I'm going to do X, Y, and Z? Well, I'm going to be the best X, Y, Z you can imagine. So when it came to this role, I just said, let me just be First Lady. Let me wake up every day and work hard to do something of value and to do it well and to do something consequential and to do something that I care about, and then let that speak for itself. And that would shut up the haters, because I would have a whole portfolio of stuff that defined me because it's what I did, not what you called me. So the best revenge is success.
Success, yeah.
And good work.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything to the haters.
Yeah.
You don't have to acknowledge them at all. You just wake up every morning and be the best you can be, and that tends to shut them up.
You know, I've always thought too that the best success comes when you can actually shift your paradigm to service, and obviously you are in a position of public service. Was it a conscious, intentional decision to sort of sit still, be with this place, and then allow your passion to fuel your interest, allow your passion to lead you to all the things you've been able to do with international girls' education, with health and wellness? Was that's a conscious, intentional decision?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because in this world, particularly when you're in public service, you're First Lady, the President, and you're interacting with the world, you know, people can smell inauthenticity, you know? They know when you are not what you appear to be. And that was always something that I said in this role, that I want people to know me, know Michelle Robinson Obama, not the First Lady, but in every interaction I have had with anybody who's had some connection with me, I have tried to be authentically myself. And in order to do that, I learned that I have to do things that I authentically care about. Because if I fundamentally deep down have a belief in the cause and it moves me, then I'm gonna be excited about it. That excitement is gonna be conveyed to the people that I'm trying to reach. It's not gonna be a heavy lift. You know, that's why people say, how can you speak in front of all these people and do this every day? Look, I get energy from people, and not everybody in politics, in public service are people. Barack and I really do. We are energized by the people we meet, you know, by the military spouses that I meet out there. I picked working with military families because they moved me. I met them out on the campaign trail, and I didn't know that there were millions of military families out there serving and sacrificing in ways that we take for granted in this country. And I vowed then and there, just from meeting them, that if I got to be First Lady,